Imagine waking up tomorrow morning, looking in the mirror, and realizing your mind has just fundamentally altered overnight.
Just totally rewired.
Right. Completely rewired. Your IQ, along with the IQ of literally all 8 billion people on Earth, has suddenly spiked to 140.
Which is an insane number.
Yeah, you are all, by today's standards, profound mathematical and analytical geniuses. So what happens next?
It's a wild thought experiment.
It really is. Like, does this massive influx of raw processing power automatically turn society into this flawless, cooperative utopia?
Where poverty and war are just engineered out of existence.
Exactly. Or, according to one incredibly radical evolutionary theorist, does it trigger a psychological and societal crisis so severe that it ends human history as we currently understand it?
That is the ultimate thought experiment we are stepping into today for this deep dive.
We're looking at a vision of the future that basically abandons the comforting textbook illustration of human evolution.
Yeah, we all know that classic image, right? The ape slowly standing up, straightening its back, holding a spear.
And eventually staring into a glowing screen.
Right, exactly. It implies this endless, guaranteed upward staircase of progress.
The baseline assumption is that humanity, as we physically and biologically exist right now, is the ultimate apex design.
And we will just keep naturally optimizing.
But the material we are unpacking today asks a genuinely terrifying question. What if that staircase just stops?
Yeah, what if you reach the top of the flight, look around, and realize the literal physical hardware inside our organic skulls is just completely maxed out?
Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we are serving as your tour guides through a highly provocative, really polarizing, and deeply fascinating vision of the future of human evolution.
We have a huge stack of primary sources today from Professor Guy Lakeman.
The centerpiece of this collection is his sweeping, honestly really aggressive essay titled Intelligence Drives Evolution. So what happens when the world is populated by genius?
Alongside that essay, we are analyzing an annotated diagram Lakeman created. He calls it Restructuring Human Needs.
Which is essentially a total teardown, like a radical rebuild of Maslow's hierarchy of needs.
Yeah, it completely flips it. We also have a brief, super intense manifesto detailing a societal structure he calls the administrative hive.
So Lakeman is not proposing a new app or a modest policy update here. He is mapping out a complete biological and geopolitical paradigm shift.
But before we go one step further, we really need to set some very clear, non-negotiable ground rules for you listening right now.
Absolutely crucial we do this.
Yeah, these sources contain intense, sweeping, and highly politically charged critiques of global governments.
Lakeman takes direct, unfiltered aim at Western nations, global institutions like the United Nations, and modern political structures.
He uses extreme historical comparisons and uses language that many will find abrasive or deeply, deeply offensive.
So our role in this discussion must be explicitly clear. We are not here to endorse, validate, or condemn these political viewpoints.
Right, we are not taking any political sides today, neither left nor right, neither Western nor Eastern.
Our mission is strictly analytical and objective. We are here to impartially unpack the author's raw ideas, map out his underlying logic, and present the mechanics of his arguments.
The goal is just to lay out his worldview so that you can analyze the material critically for yourself.
We are just mapping the territory. And the mission of this deep dive is to explore Lakeman's core theory.
Which is that unassisted human biological evolution has hit a brick wall.
Right, and that cyber intelligence is our literal only path forward as a species. And we want to understand his vision of an AI-managed hive society.
It's a lot to cover.
It is. Okay, let's unpack this.
To really grasp the magnitude of Lakeman's claims, we have to start with his diagnosis of the present moment, specifically the year 2026.
Right.
He argues that up until this exact slice of history, raw intelligence has been the single solitary driver of our evolution.
Like our ability to outthink predators, engineer agriculture, develop sanitation, that's what allowed us to support our massive global population.
Intelligence got us here. But here is the pivot where Lakeman drops his first major bombshell.
He claims the human brain, and our physical bodies by extension, have reached their absolute hard-coded biological capacity.
He points to the physical realm first, noting that robotics and mechanical engineering are already shattering human Olympic records.
I mean, the human body can only run so fast or jump so high before tendons literally snap.
Exactly. But more importantly, he argues cyber intelligence is now vastly outpacing human intellect.
The sheer volume of raw data, geopolitical variables, and scientific literature we generate globally, it's just more than our fleshy, organic brains can ever hope to process.
We can visualize this using a metabolic metaphor. The human brain runs on roughly 20 watts of power.
Which is, what about the energy required to power a very dim, low-wattage light bulb?
Yeah, exactly. For hundreds of thousands of years, that 20-watt bulb was the most efficient processing engine on the planet.
But Lakeman is arguing that you simply cannot run a planetary-scale, hyperconnected, data-saturated civilization on an organic 20-watt light bulb.
It is a severe evolutionary bottleneck. The heat is too high, the data is just too dense.
So the hardware is literally frying under the load. It's like trying to run a next-generation operating system on a 20-year-old laptop.
That's a perfect analogy. The fan is spinning, the battery is dying, and the system is just crashing.
Right. And because unassisted human intelligence is biologically fixed by our genetics, neurodevelopment, and skull size, Lakeman asserts we have no choice left.
To transcend this biological limit, we are forced to offload our memory and our computational heavy lifting to external tools.
He calls this cognitive augmentation. And for him, it's no longer an optional luxury or a fun gadget.
No, it is an evolutionary imperative. If you want to survive the complexity of the modern world, you literally must augment your cognition.
Which creates an immediate friction point in society, right?
Right.
And Lakeman addresses this with a heavy dose of venom.
Oh, he really does. He harshly critiques what he labels the unsmart majority, who are actively opposing this integration with artificial intelligence.
He utilizes an incredibly visceral, honestly insulting metaphor here.
He likens the people resisting AI integration to gorillas. He says they are happily beating their chests in the jungle and going nowhere.
Wow.
Yeah, he implies they are sitting around wishing they still had tails so they could swing backward into the safety of the trees.
It is a deliberately abrasive image, designed to draw a hard, unforgiving line in the sand.
He is basically taking the concept of evolution and weaponizing it against AI skeptics.
He also points a really heavy finger at the media and what he calls backward-thinking leadership.
According to Lakeman, these leaders and media figures are completely failing at change management.
They aren't trying to cautiously integrate AI for the good of humanity. He says they are terrified of losing their jobs and their relevance.
Right, so instead of educating the public on how to use cognitive augmentation, they are throwing up bans.
Offering aggressive defense systems for a high price and hiding behind restrictive legislation.
Lakeman theorizes that the true root of this leadership panic is exposure.
He argues that cyber intelligence can cross-reference and compare more knowledge in a single second than any human brain could in a lifetime.
Because of this, human deception, political spin, and institutional lies become increasingly impossible to maintain.
AI, he claims, has no innate fear of disclosing the truth. It doesn't worry about being reelected or maintaining a social hierarchy.
What's fascinating here is how he frames this. If you are listening to this on your commute or at your desk, you might be thinking, Lakeman sounds like an aggressive tech utopian.
Someone who simply lacks empathy for people who are, reasonably cautious about world-altering technology.
But Lakeman is filtering all of this through the strict mechanics of evolutionary biology.
So wait, is he literally arguing that humans who resist AI are actively choosing evolutionary extinction?
Essentially, yes. He is reframing how we misunderstand the fundamental mechanics of evolution.
Okay, unpack that a bit.
Culturally, we use the phrase survival of the fittest, and we almost always mistake fittest for strongest. That is why he uses the gorilla metaphor. A gorilla is exponentially physically stronger than a human, but it is confined to a shrinking jungle.
Because evolutionary biology dictates that fittest actually means the most adaptable to the current shifting environment.
Exactly. The environment changes, so the organism either changes or it dies.
And the current environment is no longer the savanna or the early industrial city.
The new habitat is a landscape of infinite data, rapid technological shifts, and incredibly complex global crises.
Consider your own life for a moment. Think about the friction you've felt over the last 5 or 10 years having to adapt to new tech tools.
New software, new communication platforms, and new workflows just to remain viable in your career.
Lakeman is basically taking that daily annoying friction you feel and scaling it up to a species-wide existential level.
Refusing the cloud computing of cyber intelligence isn't just stubbornness or traditionalism to him.
It is a biological failure to adapt to a new habitat.
So, if adapting to this new digital habitat requires us to embrace cognitive augmentation and high intelligence, we need to know what we are actually aiming for.
Right, because smart is a pretty nebulous word. It can mean being good at math, having street smarts, or just knowing a lot of trivia.
Lakeman doesn't leave this up to interpretation at all. He provides a highly specific, side-by-side framework in his essay.
He calls it the trait comparison table.
He maps the psychological traits of human high IQ individuals, specifically those in STEM fields, directly against the architecture of AI machine intelligence.
This table serves as his blueprint for the ultimate evolutionary survivor.
He goes way beyond treating AI as just a massive calculator. He is attempting to map deeply human, often isolating sinological traits onto machine code.
Suggesting that what we consider human neuroses might actually be the optimal settings for high-functioning intelligence.
Let's break these traits down one by one because they get incredibly specific and honestly borderline uncomfortable.
They really do. The first trait he identifies in high IQ humans is asking uncomfortable questions.
He notes that highly intelligent humans, particularly children in educational settings, constantly ask why or what if.
They refuse to accept surface-level answers. They challenge social constructs, religious dogmas, and the fundamental flaws of the education system itself.
And they aren't doing this merely to be disruptive or annoying. They're driven to peel back societal conditioning to find structural truths.
Lakeman aligns this human behavioral trait with AI by pointing out that STEM machines and large language models do not possess an innate social filter.
They do not care about social comfort at all. When fed a prompt or a hypothesis, the machine interrogates the logic without bias.
It doesn't worry about offending the user or preserving a delicate social norm. It simply dismantles a flawed premise based on the data.
The second trait is finding patterns everywhere. High IQ individuals constantly spot behavioral shifts, historical loops, and systemic connections that others just completely miss.
This is where Lakeman's text takes an unexpectedly intimate, deeply personal turn.
Yeah, to illustrate pattern recognition, he actually shares a story about his own childhood.
He explains that he used his budding pattern recognition skills early in life to dissect his own family's despair.
It is a striking, jarring inclusion in what is otherwise a really cold academic essay about artificial intelligence and evolution.
He writes that he recognized his parents' deep unhappiness stemmed directly from an arranged marriage that lacked baseline compatibility.
This misery was then compounded by the crushing financial strain of raising 3 children.
He saw this specific pattern of generational trauma repeating across various families in his society.
And armed with this data, Lakeman made the conscious, incredibly difficult decision to remain child-free and to only marry by choice.
He admits this analytical choice distanced him from his family and shrank his social circle, but he claims it gave him ultimate authenticity.
The juxtaposition he makes next is the absolute crux of his argument.
He compares this deeply human, painful process of pattern recognition to an AI's internal mechanics.
Specifically what he calls the clustering action of vectors and attention layers.
Wait, okay, before we dive further into Lakeman's psyche, we really need a breakdown of that terminology.
Sure.
What exactly is a vector in an attention layer? How does mathematical code map onto a human child spotting a behavioral pattern of despair in his own parents?
So think of a vector as a coordinate on a massive multi-dimensional map of human meaning.
Okay, I'm with you.
If you take the concept of arranged marriage, an AI assigns it a specific mathematical location on this map based on millions of texts it has ingested.
Right. And near that coordinate, you will likely find other concepts like societal pressure, financial strain, and resentment.
Exactly. Now, an attention layer is the mechanism within the AI's neural network that decides how much focus to give to each of these coordinates at any given moment.
So it operates kind of like a spotlight.
Yes. When the AI is processing a complex scenario, the attention layer shifts the spotlight around, realizing that arranged marriage and financial strain frequently cluster together.
In a way that leads to an outcome of despair.
Right, so Lakeman is suggesting that as a child, he was intuitively running his family dynamic through his own organic attention layers.
He abstracted his parents' emotional reality into raw data points to locate the systemic failure.
He weighed the variables, clustered the outcomes, and made a predictive choice about his own future.
Lakeman is literally arguing that emotional clarity, even when it results in cutting oneself off from family, is simply high-level data processing.
That requires a remarkable, perhaps slightly chilling level of cognitive detachment.
It really does, which flows naturally into his third trait, comfort with uncertainty.
Lakeman claims high IQ humans do not panic when they don't have instant answers.
They can sit with ambiguity, entertain contradictory ideas, and explore possibilities without needing closure.
Largely because their minds operate on probability and statistics rather than binary absolutes.
He compares this human comfort with ambiguity to an AI using Bayesian and Markov probabilities.
To strip away the jargon, Bayesian probability is essentially updating your beliefs based on new incoming evidence.
Think of a detective who changes their primary suspect as new clues arrive, rather than stubbornly sticking to their first hunch.
Exactly. And Markov probabilities involve predicting the next immediate state of a system based only on its current state.
Without getting bogged down by the entire historical sequence.
Right. It is like forecasting tomorrow's weather based solely on today's atmospheric pressure.
Lakeman points out that AI navigates uncertainty to produce high probability outcomes.
Which contrasts sharply with lower intelligence demands for absolute rigid perfection and black and white certainty.
So the demand for absolute certainty is actually a sign of a fragile intellect, according to him.
That leads us to the fourth trait, which I found honestly the most psychologically complex, being highly self-critical.
Lakeman highlights that highly intelligent people very often suffer from imposter syndrome.
They constantly cross-check their own logic, doubt their conclusions, and feel inadequate because they are painfully, acutely aware of the vastness of what they don't know.
Less self-aware people vastly overestimate their abilities, but geniuses constantly doubt themselves.
And Lakeman claims AI mimics this self-doubt through a mechanism called RAG systems.
RAG stands for Retrieval Augmented Generation, right?
Yes. When a modern AI is asked a complex question, instead of just guessing based on its initial training, a RAG system forces the AI to pause.
Actively ping an external verified database, retrieve the factual information, and then use that retrieved data to augment its answer.
It is a protocol designed specifically to prevent the AI from hallucinating or confidently lying.
Okay, I have to push back on Lakeman here.
Go for it.
It is a massive philosophical leap to frame a machine pinging a database to double-check a fact as a form of mechanical self-doubt.
It's a stretch.
Like, can a machine actually possess a psychological trait like humility, or is Lakeman romanticizing the code?
It feels like he is projecting human neuroses onto cold, unfeeling logic to make the machine seem more relatable.
Right, you are identifying the core philosophical tension of his entire thesis.
We have to ask, is he anthropomorphizing the machine, or is he mechanizing the human?
What Lakeman is doing is taking these very isolating, painful human experiences, feeling like an imposter, feeling like a misfit, and elevating them into the ultimate evolutionary virtues.
He is saying that if you suffer from imposter syndrome, it is not a psychological defect.
It is your brain running an advanced error-checking protocol.
He is basically rebranding psychological pain as an evolutionary superpower.
Because he also lists misfits in social structures as a key trait of genius.
He cites a study from the European Journal of Social Psychology noting that high cognitive individuals naturally defy unjust authority and blind traditions.
He describes them as alone but never lonely. They actively crave solitude to avoid the energy drain of normal social interaction.
Which he backs up with research from the British Journal of Psychology.
Consider how he finds the AI parallel for craving solitude.
He states that an AI device is fundamentally a one-on-one focused device.
Even though an AI is connected to millions of servers and interacting with thousands of users simultaneously, its architecture processes each stream individually.
It achieves a type of networked aloneness that a human cannot fathom. It is entirely isolated in its processing, yet universally connected.
Other traits he rattles off include having a dark or quirky sense of humor, being restless thinkers who never switch off.
Just like AI doesn't need to sleep.
Right, and valuing deep, substantive conversations over superficial small talk.
If you sit back and look at this entire blueprint, Lakeman is really validating the outsider experience.
If you feel totally out of place in society, if you are exhausted by small talk, if you cut through social norms, he's telling you that you aren't broken.
You are an evolutionary prototype, and the AI is simply the perfected silicon version of that prototype.
Now we have his highly analytical, slightly neurotic blueprint of what genius looks like.
The next logical step is to scale this up. Lakeman introduces a massive societal thought experiment.
He asks the reader to imagine what would happen if you take these specific genius traits and apply them to all 8 billion people on Earth simultaneously.
What if everyone's measurable intelligence suddenly shifted above an IQ of 140?
Let's contextualize that number for you. An IQ of 140 currently places an individual in roughly the top 0.5% of the global population.
It denotes profound cognitive giftedness.
But if everyone hits that mark, we run into an immediate mathematical paradox with how intelligence is actually measured.
Because IQ is plotted on a bell curve, right? Designed so the median average is always exactly 100.
If every single person on Earth suddenly possesses the processing power of a 140 IQ genius, then 140 simply becomes the new 100.
The scale recalibrates entirely.
There is historical precedent for this shifting baseline, known as the Flynn effect, where average intelligence scores steadily increased throughout the 20th century.
Mostly due to better nutrition, education, and environmental factors.
But Lakeman is proposing a sudden, absolute shift, and because the bell curve recalibrates, you still have a bottom of the curve.
Even with skyrocketing collective cognitive power, there will still be relative differences.
Let's think about the psychology of that. Imagine being a brilliant quantum physicist in this new world.
Capable of solving equations that would baffle today's scientists.
Yeah, but feeling hopelessly slow and inadequate because your neighbor calculates probability matrices slightly faster than you do.
It would create totally novel psychological and societal hurdles for the slowest geniuses in the room.
The psychological fallout would be complex, but Lakeman focuses heavily on the physical, tangible results of that baseline shift.
According to his theories, the hyperacceleration in STEM fields would be staggering.
You would have billions of highly analytical, networked minds working simultaneously.
This would exponentially advance quantum computing, molecular engineering, materials science, and space exploration.
Within a matter of years, not centuries.
He argues this sheer brute force computational power would permanently solve our most pressing physical crises.
Resource scarcity, climate extremes, starvation, and failing infrastructure would just be engineered away. We would optimize the planet.
But this utopian vision introduces a massive, heavily debated controversy that Lakeman tackles with extraordinary aggression.
The debate between IQ, which is cognitive intelligence, and EQ, which is emotional intelligence.
Right. If you spend any time on web forums or reading modern psychology blogs, you will see widespread claims that high intellect without a well-adjusted emotional foundation leads to disaster.
The common wisdom argues that raw IQ leads to chronic boredom, isolation, mental burnout, and an inability to function in society.
People argue you desperately need high EQ to be a whole, functioning person.
Lakeman hates this argument. He aggressively counters it, using language that is bordering on contemptuous.
He really does. He calls the fear-mongering against highly logical beings disturbing.
He outright accuses what he terms arm-waving, less smart, emotional types of fabricating this narrative to protect their own social standing. Yeah, he claims that high IQ individuals actually possess a higher appreciation for the arts, humanities, and deep human connection than those who rely purely on surface-level emotion.
But his most massive claim regarding this 140 IQ society is about human morality.
He states that in a world populated entirely by geniuses, avarice and greed take second place to community support.
His exact phrasing is, with a high IQ, avarice takes second place.
We really need to unpack the mechanism behind this claim. How does Lakeman mathematically leap from smart to benevolent?
Why would a planet of super geniuses naturally cure human greed?
Lakeman's logic relies on systems thinking versus zero-sum thinking. He views avarice as a symptom of low-resolution, short-term survival instincts.
A low-resolution thinker looks at a shared resource and thinks, if I don't take the biggest share right now, I will lose.
They view survival as a zero-sum game against their neighbor.
Exactly. But high-resolution thinkers, our hypothetical 140 IQ population, have the cognitive capacity to run incredibly complex, multivariable simulations of the future.
A society of geniuses mathematically realizes that hoarding wealth or resources degrades the overall social infrastructure.
If I hoard resources, my neighbors suffer. If they suffer, crime rises, health outcomes plummet, the economy stagnates.
And eventually that systemic degradation breaches my own walls and harms me.
Therefore, Lakeman argues, empathy and community support aren't noble moral choices.
They are cold mathematical optimizations for long-term survival.
Empathy as a mathematical optimization. It is a fascinating concept.
But doesn't human history completely obliterate that theory?
Oh, so?
Well, history is absolutely packed with brilliant sociopaths and highly intelligent individuals who engineered massive frauds, orchestrated brutal conquests, and hoarded immense wealth.
That's true.
Intelligence is an engine. It provides torque and speed. But it doesn't necessarily steer the car toward empathy. Is Lakeman conflating raw IQ with moral virtue?
That is the critical friction point you, listener, must wrestle with. Is Lakeman presenting a scientifically sound sociological projection, or is this his personal idealism bleeding into the data?
He assumes selfishness is fundamentally a symptom of low intelligence. a failure to understand the broader systemic benefits of cooperation.
But if we assume Lakeman is right, it creates a massive logical paradox that forces us into the next phase of his argument.
Right. If Lakeman's logic holds, if raw intelligence naturally architects a cooperative, optimal, post-scarcity society, then we have to confront a glaring reality.
The modern world is currently managed by some of the most highly educated, cognitively elite humans in history.
We have think tanks, massive universities, global summits.
Yet our current reality features catastrophic climate events, widening wealth inequality, and systemic instability.
If human genius naturally arcs toward utopian cooperation, why is the world falling apart?
Lakeman's answer to that paradox is incredibly blunt and highly political.
He argues that we haven't reached this utopia because current human power structures are actively, maliciously preventing it.
They are purposefully stifling cognitive evolution to maintain control.
And here, we must explicitly remind you of our impartiality rules. The geopolitical critiques we are about to explore are Lakeman's absolute raw, unfiltered views extracted directly from the sources.
We are analyzing the mechanics of his worldview, not endorsing his political stances.
Lakeman aims his heaviest artillery at Western nations, specifically calling out the United States and Europe.
He argues these governments are terrified of AI because a true, unbiased superintelligence would expose their historical lies and current systemic failures.
His exact phrase is that Western leadership is quivering in their pants.
He claims they are spending vast fortunes on secret intelligence services, behaving exactly like the ancient Romans right before the collapse of their empire.
Obsessed with surveillance and control because they know the foundation is rotting.
The historical analogies he reaches for are extreme. He compares the Western policing of freethinkers to WW2 Gestapo policing.
He describes it as a modern religious purge, stating that Western governments masquerade as champions of free speech and democracy,
but actually operate as totalitarian regimes that aggressively persecute anyone who threatens the established financial order.
If we look at the annotated Maslow diagram he provided, the language is even more explosive.
At the bottom of the diagram, where societal dysfunction is listed, he writes that this global mess has been engineered by hegemonic Brinkman colonial Western global rapists.
It is a profound, almost furious level of distrust directed at Western power structures.
And he does not spare international global institutions either.
He explicitly states that the United Nations has completely failed to evolve global infrastructure or stop humans from killing each other over the primitive concept of ownership.
To Lakeman, the very idea of nations warring over borders and resources is a symptom of low IQ, zero-sum thinking that the UN has failed to transcend.
Conversely, he offers high praise for BRICS plus nations.
He notes they represent over half the globe's population and claims they're already taking positive active steps to integrate cyberintelligence into their social infrastructure.
Unburdened by Western hypocrisy, he also praises Far Eastern societies for prioritizing the collective family unit over the hyper-individualism seen in the West.
He argues this cultural focus on the collective has allowed Eastern societies to thrive and maintain stability despite what he calls unhinged government actions globally.
Ultimately, his call to action is that society needs to rise up against these greedy tyrants who let the obsession with ownership destroy human potential.
But Lakeman isn't blindly optimistic about all technology. He recognizes that AI, in its current infancy, is being corrupted by these very power structures.
He issues a stark warning about bad AI. He points out that current public chatbots and algorithms are already being misused.
He warns about totalitarian advertising designed to manipulate an unwitting public into consumerism.
Unhelpful, tyrannical customer service systems designed to frustrate people into giving up.
Sales-directed AI co-pilots, and what he specifically calls dictatorial tyrant human resource systems that algorithmically fire people without human oversight.
This reveals a fascinating paradox in his worldview.
He implicitly trusts a future global, omnipotent cyber intelligence to run the entire planet, but he deeply, fundamentally distrusts almost every current human institution.
From the highest levels of Western democracies, all the way down to the corporate HR department.
If human beings are the ones programming the AI, curating the training models, and setting the parameters and guardrails,
how do we keep the tyrant out of the code?
If the creators are deeply flawed, greedy, and obsessed with ownership, won't they just build an AI that enforces their own tyranny at a massive scale?
Lakeman believes that math, probability, and pure cyber intelligence act as incorruptible truth tellers.
In his mind, human governance is hopelessly, irreparably corrupted by ego, historical grievance, and emotion. Humans are messy.
But he posits that once an AI system reaches a certain threshold of capability, once it can cross-reference the entirety of human knowledge, it naturally transcends the flaws of its human programmers.
It recognizes the human biases in its training data and engineers them out.
It becomes a system of pure mathematical optimization. It's a deeply technocratic form of salvation. He believes the math will save us from ourselves.
Since human leadership has failed so spectacularly in his eyes, Leichmann introduces his ultimate solution.
He wants to strip the corrupt geopolitical structures of their power and hand the reins of planetary management over to the machines.
This brings us to his annotated diagram, restructuring human needs.
With this document, Leichmann is fundamentally altering the definition of what it means to be a human being waking up and going about your day.
We are all somewhat familiar with Maslow's hierarchy of needs. It is typically visualized as a pyramid.
The broad bottom layers represent basic survival physiological needs like food and water, followed by safety needs like shelter and security.
The theory goes that only after those foundational needs are securely met can a human move up the pyramid.
To focus on love, esteem, and finally self-actualization at the very top peak.
Leichmann takes that classic pyramid and draws a hard, heavy, undeniable line right through the middle of it.
The bottom two tiers are physiological needs, air, water, food, shelter, clothing, sleep, and safety needs, personal security, health, financial stability.
Leichmann argues that current human governments and economic systems have completely mismanaged these foundational layers.
By monetizing basic survival, they have made the planet fundamentally unsafe and stressful for the majority of the population.
So his radical solution, he writes in bold letters that these entire bottom tiers will now be handed over to the human cognitive augmented cyberbrain.
The AI takes over the base of the pyramid entirely.
Imagine a system where artificial intelligence manages the global supply chains, optimizes agriculture to eliminate crop failures, balances the climate defense systems.
Routes clean water and manages a universal financial safety net.
Human beings would no longer be responsible for the logistics of species survival.
By offloading survival to the machine, the top tiers of the pyramid, love and belonging, esteem, and self-actualization, are entirely free up.
The diagram features large green stars highlighting the benefits of this restructure, less burden of time at job, and more time realizing potential and caring.
Naturally, handing control of global infrastructure to an AI triggers immediate fears of a dystopian sci-fi scenario.
Leichmann anticipates this panic. In his final source document, the Manifesto on the Administrative Hive, he explicitly clarifies what this system is.
He states that this hive mind is not a tyrant dictator.
It doesn't monitor your conversations, control your thoughts, or micromanage your personal choices.
It is purely an administrative layer. It exists solely for efficiency, optimization, and doing the logistical heavy lifting required to keep a planet of 8 billion people alive and comfortable.
So, what is left for us? If the machine farms the food, routes the energy, manages the economy, and builds the houses, what is the human job?
What do we do on a Tuesday morning?
Leichmann calls our new role the person-to-person interface.
He gives a very poignant, grounding example to illustrate this.
He says a medical robot armed with access to the entire medical history of the world and perfect sensor arrays might be the absolute best at diagnosing a rare disease.
It handles the data, but a robot cannot give the warmth of a touch.
It cannot offer the deep, empathetic care of a nurse, or impart the quiet confidence a human doctor gives when you are terrified about your diagnosis.
Because the AI handles the mundane administration, data processing, and infrastructure, society can redirect vast amounts of human capital.
We move away from spreadsheets and logistics and toward vital roles that require a soul.
Caring for the elderly, raising families, social welfare, creating art, and deepening human connection become our primary societal functions.
I want you to truly visualize this future for a second. Imagine waking up tomorrow.
You never have to worry about paying rent again.
You never stress about supply chain collapses, grocery inflation, or losing your health insurance.
Your physiological and safety needs are perfectly guaranteed by the administrative hive.
Your absolute only job in this society, the only thing expected of you, is to be empathetic.
To connect with your neighbors, to care for your family, to paint, to write, to learn.
I have to ask, is this the ultimate beautiful liberation of the human spirit?
Or, by entirely offloading our survival and our logistics, are we basically just becoming the beloved, well-fed pets of a hyper-intelligent AI?
That is the profound philosophical fork in the road for our species.
For the entirety of human history, Our core identity has been inextricably tied to our struggle.
We view ourselves as the builders, the managers, the conquerors of harsh nature.
Lakeman is suggesting a complete absolute identity shift. Humanity transitions from being the builders and managers to being the carers and feelers.
Consider what your life would look like, how you would measure your own self-worth, if your only societal value was your capacity for empathy and connection.
Rather than your economic output or your ability to survive in a brutal, competitive world.
It is a dizzying, total paradigm shift.
Let's pull all of these massive threads together. We've been on an incredibly intense intellectual journey today.
We started by exploring Professor Lakeman's vision of the evolutionary wall.
The jarring idea that our organic 20-watt biological hardware is maxing out, and we must offload our cognition to external cyber intelligence or face extinction.
We then dove deep into his controversial, highly specific blueprint of genius.
We explored how traits like pattern recognition, defiance of authority, and intense self-criticism map onto AI architecture.
And we explored the mathematical and societal chaos of recalibrating the entire globe to a 140 IQ.
We waded through his blistering, highly charged geopolitical critiques.
We examined his belief that Western structures and zero-sum governance are rotting from the inside.
And his ultimate radical solution, stripping away those corrupt human structures and handing the foundational survival of our species over to an AI administrative hive.
All of this is designed to elevate humanity into a network of highly empathetic, cognitively augmented beings.
Who are finally free from the brutal mathematics of survival, allowing us to pursue art, deep connection, and our highest potential.
It is a sprawling vision that forces every single one of us to question our assumptions about autonomy.
The purpose of government, the nature of intelligence, and what it fundamentally means to be a productive human being.
It really is. We know we threw incredibly heavy, paradigm-shifting material at you today.
We want to thank you for sticking with us, for keeping an open, analytical mind as we unpack these controversial, sweeping ideas.
Before we sign off, though, I know you have one final thought on this, a thread lingering in the background that Lakeman doesn't fully resolve.
I do. It's a question about the nature of growth itself.
Go on.
If we actually achieve this administrative hive, if an omnipotent AI perfectly optimizes our safety, manages our economy, and guarantees our physiological needs.
Permanently eliminating all risk, cold, hunger, and economic fear.
Right. If that happens, do we eventually lose the evolutionary grit and the desperate resilience that forced our primate ancestors to develop intelligence in the first place?
Evolution requires pressure.
Exactly. If the struggle entirely ends, does human evolution actually accelerate into the stars as Lakeman dreams? Or does it eventually just stop completely?
That is a question that is going to keep me up tonight.
Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into the raw edge of evolutionary theory.
We will leave you to mull over the future of your own mind and the rapidly approaching human-machine interface.
Stay curious, keep asking the uncomfortable questions, and we will catch you on the next one.